Hello and welcome back to the Proposal Pulse. My name is Rachelle Ray. I'm the head of AEC Marketing Innovation here at Open Asset. And today I'm super excited because we have a very special guest joining us. This is Janki DePalma. Janki, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks for having me. My name is Janki DePalma. I am the Director of Business Development at W.E. O'Neill here in Austin, Texas. And you and I have known each other for quite a long time, so it's really going to be a fun conversation. I'm so honored to be asked to be a part of this. Thank you.
I'm stoked. The first time Janky and I sat down over queso, she just blew my mind with her insights and the questions she was asking and the conversation we've had, and we've just been friends ever since. So excited to bring a taste of that to everyone today. And today we are talking about the disconnect that often exists between business development and leadership teams. So if you have ever wondered what your BD team wishes you understood, then this episode is for you. And I thought we would kick it off kind of looking at that gap, right, between what's happening in business development and what's happening on the leadership side. So my question for you, Janky, is you obviously work very closely with both business development teams and leadership. So what is the most common disconnect that you see between the two?
Some of it goes down to the fundamental of why business development is necessary in professional services because it's sort of its unique animal. It's not like sales, which would be part of like say product marketing, where you have someone who's like selling a software or selling, you know, account line or something like that, right? So business development is so unique in our industry, and especially I think how the AEC industry operates, right? So I feel like sometimes there's people who might have grown up in a firm where you have, say, named partners who had initially been really strong doer sellers, right? Like they ate what they killed because that's how their firm survived. And many firms still have a doer seller model or at least some type of structure in place. So I think sometimes it becomes really hard for people to understand how do you build relationships if you don't do the service. I've encountered that at every place I've worked at where there's just this sort of questioning. In some places, the questioning is a little more on the skeptical side, and other places, the questioning is just more curious.
For sure. I, having been thrown into a BD role in the
Mhm.
past, also asked, how do you want me to do this when I don't know how to do what you do?
It is because it's sort of like, I mean, basically, what's always fascinating is that like people want to work with people that they know, like, and trust, right? And you're moving people through that continuum of do they know us, do they like us, and ultimately do they trust us? And you have that, and at the same time, there's this fallacy, I think, where people think, well, people hire us because we are the best architect, best engineer, or best builder. But the truth is, it's like there's probably at least five other firms that could like do this exact same work, and we all have similar tools, similar portfolios. I mean, there's nuances with your staff, but really, what makes someone choose, obvious, like often like hinges on that trust factor. Like, do I trust you to cover my behind, right? Are you going to answer the phone when something happens? Are you going to tell me what I don't know because I'm not a like my full-time job isn't whatever is this service, right? So that's kind of where we come in is to help with like building that relationship and sort of moving people through that funnel. So it's kind of an interesting thing where it's like I don't need to know how to like I'm not there like creating a Gantt chart or I'm not, doing a column layout, but I'm here to help create that relationship that moves us towards ultimately hiring us.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so important. It's so important. But that disconnect is pervasive and it seems to be stuck in AEC. Do you have any thoughts on why we
I mean,
can't
I
change
feel like
this?
within and so I will preface this by saying like everything is my opinion based on my interaction and the anecdotal feedback I get from others, right? So there's some firms that totally get it. There's some firms that are breaking a lot of the stereotypes and stuff like that. But I think one of the things that's really difficult is like the low barrier to entry for most of these roles. And I think, especially in a world I will say more for like the AE, less on the C side, but on the AE side, like you are driven by billables, right? It's like billable hours, and then you're also driven by licensure, as a
Right.
way to prove how much you know. And both these things are absent in the work that both marketers or BD professionals have, right? So you have this low barrier to entry where no one has a degree in business development, right? And even when you have certifications and other things, those are not necessarily universally recognized or understood. So it's different. I don't have like a PE, right? So
Right.
there's sort of these things where people then kind of wonder, how do I know you know what you know? Because you just kind of rolled into this position. So there's that one aspect. And then I also think, and this goes for all three, it's hard to like measure and have like really strong KPIs. And that's kind of something that, especially in construction, a little bit in engineering, rely on, right? And so there's like metrics that like, what are you measuring? And in a way, it's like, how do I measure, how close of a relationship we have? Like you and I have known each other for a long time. I don't see you that often, but we interact in a variety of ways. How would I quantifiably measure like how good of friends you and I are, and whether,
Right.
so it's sort of like I'm continually, um, you know, kind of feeding that emotional bank account that we have, but it's so different than, say, the other roles that many of our uh, practitioners are used to doing, which are very measurable and very repeatable, and they're very quantifiable. So you have both these like amorphous things that I think then it just becomes really hard for people to understand, like what exactly do you do, and why are we paying you for it, and how do I know you're doing a good job? So. I mean, do you,
Good
do you think
question.
there's additional elements? But I mean, these are the two that I see predominantly.
I would totally agree. I think those are huge, and we have those soft skills, hard skills conversations all the
Hmm.
time. Like what is valuable? Yes.
Yeah, it's difficult. And then I think the barrier to entry is one of the biggies, because you don't necessarily have to have a certain degree or a certain anything to be able to get into these roles. And a lot of times, what's great about that is it shows how adaptable, flexible a person is, how much emotional intelligence they have to be able to pick up the nuances of whatever industry they're in and adapt to it, either as a marketer or as a BD person. But at the same time, I can create a thing. Well, is this person qualified? How do I know? How can I gauge what a qualified BD person looks like? And then you fall into this area where either the work you're doing is dismissed, or it's unappreciated, or you have sort of this like um, stereotypes of what a good BD person is, and it's like a caricature.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
1000%
Uh,
know what you're talking about. Going to play with your little friends, we've talked
yeah, like
about
going
before,
golfing with your little
like
buddies. Everyone gets
yeah.
like diminished and diminutive, right? Like your little friends and your all those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leadership makes a lot of assumptions, practitioners make a lot of assumptions. So let's transition into that. What BD teams really want leadership and those technical teams to know? My question to you is, what are the top things that BD teams wish leadership better understood or appreciated?
For me, one of the things is I wish they could see how all of those little things add up in terms of developing a relationship, and how they all come into play to the final win. And sometimes it's really, even if you are documenting everything in a CRM, it's still hard to realize that these were all little touch points that moved a relationship along. And I think for me, that's the biggest one, because a lot of times I might have a situation where we're pursuing an end client, and then I'm sort of gathering up all these people who serve as allies to advocate for us, right? And give us intel and do all these things. But it's so there's such a weird pattern. It's kind of like one of those like mystery shows where there's like the yarn and it's connecting to all these. So we're kind of doing that. Right? But it's not linear. So a lot of times leadership or the practitioner like, oh, you just scheduled a meeting. Like, so what? Like, why would you consider that a big deal? And you're kind of like, no, 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 I did all this. And that's what kind of moves this along. And all these factors come into play, right? And so I feel like that is a big part of it. I also really, again, my own personal experience is I really wish practitioners, especially, and I think leadership too, but really other like subject matter experts, like the people who you're working with, understood that we take this stuff so personally, and for us a win is really, we feel like we really worked hard at it. A loss is devastating. Like I still look at buildings and I will still get heartbroken because I was like, that should have been ours. I worked really hard on that. And I think a lot of times those people feel like, well, you're not the engineer on the project. Like you didn't work on this project. This isn't your
Right.
project. And you're sort of kept away from that celebration or even the ability to mourn. I feel especially in this celebration, like there's been a lot of times where I've been at a firm where I'm not invited to those things, like a milestone event, or I'm not in a group picture, and I've been told, well, this is a team picture. So,
As if you're
here's
not
your
part of
camera, go
the
take our
team.
team picture. I'm not getting invited to say a topping out or groundbreaking because I'm not on the project. Like, why would we invite you? And these are the kind of things where then I think it becomes hard because you're leveraging so much of your own personal relationships, right, to create relationships for the firm. And then to have people just really limit what's considered a teammate. And I would even expand that out to other groups, like all the back of house people also feel like, like they worked on this project, even if what they were doing was like doing accounts payable, right? Or, but, or reading the legal contract and, like they were part of this team. And sometimes it's really easy in our industry to say the team is just the person who did billable work
Right.
and just be very exclusionary about that.
That's always been wild to me because I take so much pride in the portfolios of like the companies that I work for. And I'm proud of the work that the technical team members did. So for them to not acknowledge that
I
investment
think they
is
they
crazy.
just it's just like sometimes I'm going to assume it's not malicious, but I feel like it's the sense of like, well, no, the work is whatever, column layout, wall detail, uh, Procore, whatever, whatever site you're in, right? And so I didn't do that. So you didn't work on this project. Like, did
Right.
you actually physically do work on this project? No. And that kind of goes back to some of the element too of do they understand what we're doing, like how this all connects? And I had a conversation the other day about compensation, and a woman was saying how a lot of times her work would not get bonus. And I've had that where like the work I did not get bonus because, oh, well, you did your job was to win as many projects as possible. But say the engineers who were working on those projects got bonused because they were working hard and we want to
Right.
encourage that. And I was like, well, they wouldn't have any work to work on if it weren't for me. And it was just a shrug your shoulders vibe from leadership. It was like, well, I don't understand why your job is to just win and go keep doing that. you know? So someone else was like telling me that same situation and it can be very difficult.
Extremely.
Yeah.
I, yes. On the marketing side, I feel this. I've probably
Totally. It's the
seen
same on the BD
those
side. I mean,
binders,
it's not that
right?
much different.
I feel like we're aligned. On our side, it's us versus them, and I don't want it to be us versus them.
I mean, I think sometimes at least like on the marketing side, you can have something quantifiable with like hours worked, number of proposals. I hate measuring hit rates because I feel that that's unfair, but you can have things like that. But on the BD side, but then it's like, am I just measuring like how many times have I called you? Or, it's like
Agreed.
yeah.
The thought of like cold calling someone or just calling in general, because
No one wants to talk on the phone
no
anymore,
one
but
wants to talk on the phone anymore. So I a
no, but you
thousand
know what I
points
mean.
to
It
you.
becomes difficult. Like you and I are friends enough where if I texted you, you would like text back. But that relationship, that might be a 5-second text that's built on a 6-year relationship, right?
Right.
And so sometimes people will be like, well, how many hours did you work to get this project? And I was like, I don't know how to answer that because it came from a literal text from a friend of mine who told me, some like key piece of information.
Right.
But that, relationship happened because we were friends for 10 years. So do you count the 2 seconds for the text? Do you say it was like 10 years in the making?
Absolutely 10 years in the making.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll
Um,
see.
in the interest of looping in leadership, do you have any tips for building a stronger partnership between business development and leadership? Like, what can we do differently to strengthen our relationships?
This Oh, so this is one thing that I struggle with a lot. And I think it came from a firm that really valued billable time, right? So I sometimes get very, very protective of leadership's time when it comes to meetings or events. I almost want it to be everything is ready to roll and they just kind of come in and like sign the paperwork. And that's great in the sense that it helps, save their time. But I think that leadership needs to be part of the pursuit and part of all the interactions, right? And so I am growing to the part, in this new position where a lot of the early relationship management, I'm bringing in my, you know, uh, VP. And it might be the first big meeting that we're having with, say, an architect that I know is like working on a project with a client that we are trying to get work with. And my gut will often tell me, well, no, I should just take this meeting by myself and develop this relationship and get some intel and then bring him in, like later on, like when it's further. Now I'm kind of realizing, no, he needs to see sort of what it looks like in a much more unbaked stage. It's not also polished and curated. And I think in the past, I used to try to create it so that like those people were spending so little time doing all the extraneous stuff. But that's what we do. And ultimately, if you're trying to get people to know, like, and trust you, the trust can't just be me. Like, it can't, no one's going to give us a project because they like me. I'm not doing the work. So I need to get these people involved so they're seeing, like, oh, which true story, my director of pre-con comes with me to S&PS a lot. And they see him around. And so I'm not just saving him and trotting him out for this particular moment. He is building his own credibility with people. And that's taken me years to realize that that is not a waste of their time, even though they're busy.
For sure. It's like you're pre-selling the relationship to the technical staff.
We are, and we're kind of, I'm doing it together. So it's not just me. It's not just based on my relationship or my likability. They're also getting to know this person together. And we're building that relationship together. And I think they would understand what we're going through more. Because they're just like, oh yeah, you had like this preliminary meeting with the developer, and then you connected with the architects on these things, and then you chatted with this person, and we see all the steps that are involved. And sometimes I think there's this, I don't know if you ever watched Mad Men. There's this part where like Roger has a throwaway line where he says like, why am I punished for making my work look easy? And I feel like that's a thing that all of us get. It's
Yeah.
like, should I have been like sweating more? And so I feel like this co-selling, in a way, it not only it develops relationships, but it also helps them see like all the stuff you're doing.
It'd be great if it did. I mean,
I mean, occasionally you'll see some firms who just like it seemed like they woke up one day and decided to, start working here. And I was like, how did you like score all these projects? Like you don't even have an office here. Uh, then I'm gonna have a Mean Girls quote. She doesn't even go here. They don't even have an office here,
it's true. It's true.
right? Like, how does this
But like,
happen?
what? Janky, this has been amazing. Do you have any final thoughts on building relationships or misconceptions or?
There is this idea that there's a certain way to build relationships. And it hinges around this stereotype that you're like extremely extroverted and maybe it's like the events are very like social, you're drinking a lot, you're eating a lot, you're doing all these kind of things, right? And that is a way to build relationships. But I would love for people to look at building relationships almost in this is kind of a weird analogy, but like almost in the same analogy that we have about your fashion style, right? Like there's no like one way to dress and one way to present yourself, understanding what you like doing, where you authentically are at, and then still following certain rules of how do people connect and get to know each other better. The same way that you might develop, say, a capsule wardrobe based on rules of style combined with your interests and practical aspects of your life. I feel like relationships can be that way too. So you don't all have to be like, okay, I gotta do BD. That means I am nonstop happy hours and going to these cattle call events with 200 people and doing all these things. There's so many different ways to build a relationship, just like there's so many different ways to dress, but you still want to do it in a way that is your authentic style and honors that. So in the same way, how do you find out what your authentic connection styles are? How do you, find ways to create relationships and do that innately move people through that know, like, and trust continuum? Maybe you're developing your relationship through like LinkedIn, like you're commenting, creatively, and you're not going to a ton of happy hours, but this is how you create those connections. Or you write, and when you write, people can see, your insights, and they sort of find, like, understand who you are. Like for me, I'm a one-on-one relationship person, and it's taken me years to stop shape-shifting and wanting to close out the bar, and because I hated doing that, but I figured that was another quantifiable way to show how good I was. So once I finally got to this point where I was like, I really want to just have like a couple good conversations. So now if I go to an event, I tell myself that all I really want is like maybe 2 or maybe 3 good connection points. That's a successful event for me.
I love that. I think it'll be really helpful, honestly, for like leadership to understand if they're comparing your style now to a past BD person's style, there's going to be a disconnect there for sure.
And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like somebody who's like, I wish we had a BD person who wore 3-piece suits. I don't wear 3-piece suits. Like, if you want that person, you can hire that person, but like, I'm not that person, and I'm okay with being the person who's this style, because this style is successful. And I'm not saying there's ways you can't improve. Again, killing this metaphor, it's like you can always improve your style, right? But you can still
Beautiful.
do it in a way that stays authentic. So I would love that, is if that's like what we changed, because then everybody could do it, because ultimately having 50 people developing relationships is going to be beneficial for us versus just me and my pre-con director or my GM, right?
Right.
So
For sure. For
mhm.
sure. The more touch points you have, the more relationships you build, like the better off
Right.
you'll be.
So, yeah, totally. Right. So and the more intel I can feed to my marketing team as we win
Yeah.
proposals, right? Oh,
Thank you. This has been fantastic insights. And I just want to let our listeners know if you are in a leadership role and you want your business development team to thrive, please listen to Janki. It literally just starts with understanding the value that they bring and what they're doing, and understanding that it's not always going to look the same, but the value is there. So, for all of you listening, if you want more ways to elevate your proposal and BD teams, subscribe for more episodes of the Proposal Pulse, or check out openasset.com/resources. Janky, thank you so much for joining us today. It
thanks
has
for
been
having me.
wonderful.